A young buyer can spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on a modern family home and get an outdoor space dramatically smaller than the garden behind an apparently ordinary older semi. Why did Britain build houses with gardens like this and end up building developments like this? The reason older gardens were so long wasn't purely generosity. Modern planning and land economics changed what gets built. There is no single UK-wide minimum garden size protecting buyers. And once you understand what happened to the land around our houses, modern British estates start making a lot more sense. Walk down a typical suburban street in the UK, and the physical contrast is obvious. A semi-detached home from the 1930s sits back from the road, boasting a rear garden that seems to stretch on forever. Meanwhile, a newly built 4-bedroom house nearby occupies a plot where the back fence feels almost within arm's reach of the kitchen window. Why does this gulf exist? Were early 20th century house builders simply more generous with their land? Did the state once enforce different standards of space? Or did the simple economics of building plots function differently back then? The answers are rarely straightforward, because older British gardens were never actually uniform. Victorian urban terraces featured cramped backyards, designed primarily for basic sanitation and coal storage, offering little room for leisure. Edwardian homes saw outdoor spaces expand slightly to improve ventilation, but it was the suburban expansion of the interwar years and post-war reconstruction that truly supersized the British garden. Historians explain that these expansive green plots became popular during specific decades to support home food production and promote public health, rather than serving as a permanent planning blueprint. These long back gardens were a product of their specific time, rather than a universal standard that every older generation enjoyed. Modern housing development operates under a strict economic reality. A single site must carry several competing demands, and the private garden is only one claimant. A rectangular parcel of land that once held 50 spacious homes can be tightened to fit more dwellings. Yet, shrinking these backyards does not translate directly into extra developer profit. Instead, land economists explain that site geometry, finance costs, and Section 106 developer contributions determine whether a scheme can actually be built. Private lawns must constantly compete with parking bays, access roads, utilities, and sustainable drainage systems for every square metre of space. This leaves a fundamental question: who decides the acceptable balance among these competing uses? Many buyers assume a legal safety net protects the size of their outdoor space, but the reality is different. No single statutory minimum garden size exists across the United Kingdom, and planning systems diverge significantly between England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Instead of a national law, England relies on the National Design Guide. This framework states that private and shared outdoor spaces must simply be fit for purpose. Planners assess size, shape, practical use, sunlight, privacy, and planting, but the guide avoids naming a single, mandatory figure. This leaves the actual numbers entirely to local councils, creating varied standards. For example, Broxbourne Council expects 50 square metres of space for a 1-bedroom house, 60 for a 2-bedroom, 70 for a 3-bedroom, 80 for a 4-bedroom, and 100 square metres for houses with 5 bedrooms or more. They also normally expect a 10-metre garden depth. Nearby, Stevenage Borough Council sets a baseline of 50 square metres and a 10-metre depth for terraced and semi-detached homes, expecting larger detached properties to exceed those benchmarks. These are local guidelines, not laws across the United Kingdom. Ultimately, your postcode dictates exactly what planners consider an acceptable garden. In the early 2000s, Planning Policy Statement 3 set an indicative national target of 30 dwellings per hectare. While this density goal squeezed outdoor space, the government never explicitly ordered developers to shrink back gardens. When ministers removed this national density floor in 2010, local councils gained the flexibility to set their own rules. Land economists point out that density and garden size are related but not identical. A developer can build high-density schemes using flats, mews houses, or terraced layouts, without automatically stripping away every back lawn. Instead of a direct mandate, the reduction of modern garden footprints often stems from how space is reassigned across the entire plot, shifting land to the front of the house for parking, bins, and access roads, while leaving the back garden to inherit the remaining, tighter boundaries. At the street edge, the physical changes are clear. For decades, the British front garden was defined by low brick walls, privet hedges, and small lawns. Today, many of these green buffers have vanished under concrete, asphalt, and block paving, driven by the practical demand for household parking. In areas with limited public transport, families routinely need off-street space for 1 or 2 cars. Industry trend claims suggest over half of UK front garden space is now paved, though this remains an unverified estimate rather than an official census. This creates a real trade-off. While driveways solve a daily parking problem, impermeable surfaces remove vegetation, block drainage, and reduce street-level cooling. Some homeowners use permeable gravel to balance these needs, proving that off-street parking does not have to mean a total loss of urban drainage. Do buyers actually care about green space? A 2026 commercial survey by Hayter claims 80% view a garden as highly important, with 75% calling size the most critical factor. The survey also reports 76% would reject a dream home if the garden was too small. While commercial surveys reflect aspirations rather than real-world purchasing constraints, official data confirms a stark spatial divide. The Office for National Statistics reported in 2020 that 1 in 8 British households has no garden at all. Where they do exist, geography dictates their scale. London house gardens have a median size of 140 square metres, 26% smaller than the Great Britain average. For first-time buyer Sarah, this inequality means balancing a budget against actual soil, as access remains split by income, tenure, and location. Compact development offers a direct trade-off. Smaller private gardens require less maintenance, freeing up time for busy households. This tighter footprint allows for denser neighbourhoods that can support local shops, reliable public transport, and walkable streets. Shared communal parks can compensate for a smaller back lawn, but only if they are genuinely accessible, well designed, and kept in good condition. When communal spaces are neglected or locked away, the compromise falls apart. Developers often argue that compact gardens reflect modern, low-maintenance lifestyles. While this can be true, that argument only holds if the home's layout compensates for what is lost outside. Judging a home means looking at the entire plot rather than counting bedrooms. When viewing a property, step outside and ignore the wide-angle marketing photographs. Check the garden's orientation to see how much direct sunlight it actually receives. Measure the usable width and depth, and look up to see if neighbouring windows directly overlook your space. Consider where practical items will go. Check for designated storage for bins, bicycles, and lawnmowers, and look for damp patches that indicate poor drainage. If you plan to extend the property in the future, calculate whether a new extension will eat up your remaining outdoor space entirely. Britain's relationship with outdoor space has not changed, but the economic and physical limits of our land have. A smaller garden is not a design failure if the house, the plot, and the surrounding neighbourhood work together. Yet as our domestic spaces continue to shrink, other parts of the British home are feeling the squeeze, such as the classic garage, which often struggles to hold a modern family car. Subscribe for more practical guides explaining the strange features and hidden histories of British housing. As land becomes our most precious commodity, the classic British back garden is no longer a default guarantee. Today, choosing a home means deciding what we are willing to compromise on. Our outdoor spaces may be shrinking, but how we value the ground beneath our feet has never mattered more.